You're listening to the Red Eye Hour.
Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, J.Meeks, and welcome to the Red Eye Hour, and welcome to a new solo stories. First, though, I have a few words I'd like to say. I hope everyone out there is doing good and as well. To all my friends, family, fans of the podcast, everybody out there. Also want to say congrats to the LA Rams for winning the Super Bowl. It was a good game. It was good, man. I liked it. I enjoyed it. The halftime show, I thought it was cool. I don't think it was the best halftime show ever. But I thought it was cool, and it was nostalgic for people in our 40s like myself, because that's music we grew up on. I do wish they, like, each artist would have had a little more time to do, like, more melodies, but it's fine. It was still pretty cool. 50 Cent, that was kind of a surprise. I kept hoping that they would come out with, like, a Tupac hologram, but they never did. But that's okay. Also, I want to tell everybody, don't forget to check out the Red Eye Hour on TikTok. You can find it at the Red Eye Hour, separated by periods. We have some alternative content on there, and it's called the Dan Reeves Saga. And I think we're about on part 8 right now, I think. And this is a story about a private investigator who is on the tail of this character named Dan Reeves. There's no backstory. You don't know anything about it. You are just plunged into this universe of these two characters, and the messages they leave on these videos is all you have to go on. During these different episodes, I do introduce some different characters that this Dan Reeves knows, but it's just it's fun. It's characters. It's like comedy sketch. It's not falling out of your chair funny. It's a twisted sense of humor, but it's funny. And I do all the characters, so that also makes it funny, because you know that's me doing all the characters. And so I have a good time doing it. So go on there, follow me, watch the videos, and we'll keep having those come out, because I have a bunch made already. I'm just releasing them every week or so. Also, I want to say I'm going to have prototype 2 of merch going to be done soon. You know, I had the prototype 1, which was the black hoodie with our red, white, and black logo. It's of the old-fashioned microphone with the headphones on it, and then in the background there's like a silhouette of a plane. I get a lot of good looks from people when I wear it, so it's an eye catcher. But the prototype 2s that I'm having made, that will be done soon, are going to be the all white hoodies, and it's going to be my eye logo, and then underneath it says the Red Eye Hour. I'm really excited for those. I think those are going to look sharp. So I'll let you guys know when those are done. And if you want to reach out and contact me, if you really like any of the hoodies of these prototypes I'm making and you want one, let me know, and we can order it, and I'll let you know the price. And then lastly, I want to tell everyone I'm going to be having some new episodes coming up soon, where we're going to be having guests on the Red Eye Hour. They're going to kind of be like interviews, but not really. I'm not really interviewing them and asking a bunch of questions, but they're going to be guests, and they're going to be telling us about themselves and a little bit of background, sharing stories, and I think it's going to be really fun to hear about other people's points of view and their perspectives, whether you agree with it or not. And these are also going to be video podcasts. I was going to do strictly still audio podcasts, so you only would listen to it, but I think we're probably going to do both, but they're going to be video. So we're really looking forward to it. I'm in the middle of kind of ironing out all the last details of how it's going to work. We're we're really excited, and that's coming real soon. So I've been just pumped about it because it's getting closer, and I've been working on it for a while now. And I think that possibly with these guest interviews, it's going to kind of take the Red Eye Hour podcast to that next step. And I'm really looking forward to it. I have several people lined up that are already said, yes, I will be a guest. A couple of those people wanted to be guests, so that was great. And then I also, from more people that are starting to pick up on the Red Eye Hour and follow us and starting to check us out, I have some people from other podcasts that would like to be a guest on the Red Eye Hour, so that's awesome. And I also, just today, got a message from somebody that's the CEO of an organization that would like to be a guest on the Red Eye Hour that is fans. So I will definitely keep you guys updated on that. That's really exciting news. But next, I've wasted 6 minutes of your time updating you guys on stuff. Let's get into the new solo stories. So this will be Solo Stories, Part 12. The Odor of Melting by Edward D. Hoke. And again, this is from the Alfred Hitchcock series presents Stories to be Read with the Door Locked. Another one of my favorite stories from this book, and I'm going to be sharing it with you guys right now. So without further ado, let's get into it. The thing he remembered most vividly from that last instant before the plane hit the cresting Atlantic waves was the odor of melting. The pungent wisp of a smell which told him the electric circuits had gone. Then there was no time for anything else. No time to reach the passenger compartment. No time for anything but a clawing endeavor to survive. He couldn't have lived long in the freezing waters, but it seemed that he bobbed like Ishmael for days, the only survivor of this black disaster, clinging to one of the plane seats until at last some unseen hands were lifting him. Perhaps he was bound for heaven or for hell. He no longer cared. He merely slipped into a quiet slumber where the dreams were thick and deep like the waters of the Atlantic. When he opened his eyes sometime later, a man in white slacks and a white turtleneck sweater was bending over him. He was aware of the man's face and the coolness of the sheets against his naked body, and nothing more. "How do you feel?" the man asked. I don't know. I expected to be dead. Where am I?" The man smiled and felt the pilot's forehead. "We saw the crash and pulled you out of the water. You're very lucky. It's an awfully big ocean." Now he was aware of the gentle swaying of the room, and he knew he was on a boat of some sort. "What ship is this?" he asked. "The yacht Indos." The man smiled at the pilot's blank expression. "Owned by J.P. Galvin. Perhaps you've heard of him." He tried to connect the name with something in his memory, and then suddenly everything else flooded back. "The president!" He gasped. "The president was on the plane. I must..." He was struggling to get out of the bed, but the man restrained him. "You were the only survivor. There's nothing you can do now." "How long have I been here?" "You've been sleeping. It's almost 7 hours since we pulled you from the water." "But, my God, I've got to get the word to Washington." "That's been taken care of. They know you're here." "But, the president, I've got to tell him what happened. I was the pilot. It was my responsibility." "Rest for a while. Mr. Galvin will want to speak with you soon." The man turned and went out, perhaps to summon the owner of the yacht. Alone, between the cool white sheets, he ran over the whole thing again in his mind. He had been the chief pilot of the presidential plane for only 6 months when the President of the United States decided on a flying trip to France and West Germany. The visit and the high-level talks that accompanied it had been most successful. The president and his advisors had been pleased when they finally boarded the plane in Paris for that return flight. They were more than an hour out to sea when it happened. Suddenly, and without warning, an autumn storm blowing up from the tropics, perhaps an offshoot of some distant hurricane, had hurled a single lightning bolt at the plane, knocking out the radio and the electrical systems. It was a freak accident that shouldn't have happened, but it did. He remembered the odor of melting as the plastic insulation began to go. Remembered even seeing the yacht, a single speck on the vast expanse of a storm-tossed waves. Suddenly, the plane would no longer function. It was a dead thing, dead beneath his prodding hands. He had screamed something at his co-pilot, frantically pressing every emergency button within reach. They'd got the auxiliary radio transmitter to function for a few seconds, but he'd only managed a brief gasping of words, "Going down! Rush! Help!" Before that, two fizzled into spectrums of spark. He remembered the water, and then nothing else until now. "How long was I in there?" he asked the man in the slacks when he returned. "It seemed like hours." "We had you out in about 20 minutes. "No one else?" The man shook his head. "No one else." He offered him a cigarette and added, "Mr. Galvin is coming down to talk to you." "Fine." The cigarette tasted good. "Are you Mr. Galvin's son?" "Nothing so important. I'm only his secretary. You may call me..." He hesitated, then finished, "Martin." The cabin door opened and a small, middle-aged man entered. He wore a dark blue nautical jacket with brass buttons and a captain's cap that seemed oddly out of place above his thin, pale features. "You would be John Harris, the pilot of the plane?" he said without preliminaries. "I am J.P. Galvin." He partly lifted himself from the bunk to shake the man's hand. Memory stirred again, and this time it was a magazine article that he'd read some time back. J.P. Galvin, international banker, a man who gloried in the power to manipulate fortunes and world currency. "Thank you for saving me," he said. "It was nothing. A stroke of luck on your part that the plane came down so close to my yacht. But I was sorry for the others. Your president, a fine man. Do you have a radio I could listen to? I'd like to know what they're saying." Galvin nodded and sat down beside the bunk. "All in due course. First, tell me what happened." The yacht had begun a gentle rocking, and Harris was aware for the first time that the engines had been cut. He wondered why. He wondered if they were perhaps preparing to shift him to a larger ship, possibly an American warship that had reached the search area. "The electrical system failed," he told Galvin, going through the story as he remembered it, reliving once more the unexpected fury of the brief storm. There was no chance to save the president or even get off a radio message. Galvin smiled slightly. "Oh, but you did get off a message, Mr. Harris." "What?" "Your new president has already been sworn into office, is under the impression that the plane was shot down by the Russians." "What?" He sat up in the bunk again. this time with a sudden cold sweat forming over his body. How could he think that? They picked up a few garbled words. Russians was the only words they understood. He thought back to that hasty final message. Rush, help, could have sounded like Russians in the static of the storm-swept airwaves. But that's terrible. That could start a war. Exactly, Galvin agreed. I've got to use your radio at once. I have to get the truth to Washington. But the small man restrained him. There is plenty of time for that. Your new president took the oath of office almost immediately. Even though the search for survivors still continues, I am most anxious to see how he handles the situation. How he handles it? We could be at war at any minute now, and the president might be powerless to prevent a nuclear holocaust. Galvin sighed. Mr. Harris, my business is power. I have made a career out of the skillful manipulation of monies. Don't you see? I have in my hands now the greatest single power a man has ever had. I have the power to stop World War III, or to let it proceed. Harris rolled over on the bunk, sweating freely now. That's crazy talk. It couldn't have gone that far yet. No? Galvin motioned to his secretary. Turn on the speaker for the shortwave radio. The secretary vanished for a moment and then reappeared as a hidden wall speaker suddenly came to life. And no further word. Meanwhile, the Great Atlantic Search continues. 100 aircraft and 24 ships have now converged on the general area in which the president's plane went down. Some bits of wreckage have been sighted, but there is no trace of survivors at this hour. Meanwhile, in Washington, both houses of Congress have gone into an extraordinary all-night session to hear an urgent address by the new president. It is expected that the president will attempt to calm those who are calling for an immediate declaration of war with Russia. But on the basis of the presidential pilot's last words before the crash, it is becoming obvious that the pressure of an aroused public could plunge the United States and Russia into war within another 24 hours. Moscow has denied all knowledge of the missing plane, but it is known that Russian fishing boats were in the vicinity. Now for a direct report from... We've got to stop them, Harris interrupted from the bunk. We've got to... Galvin signaled the secretary to turn off the speaker. You see, Mr. Harris, that is my problem. Should I stop them? For the first time, he felt the fear, not only for the others, but for himself. What do you mean? I can stop them if you won't. You told them you'd rescued me. Overheard somewhere, one of the search planes dipped low and then climbed again. It was the first one he'd heard. You did tell them, didn't you? Galvin blinked and stepped closer to the bunk. We have told them nothing, Mr. Harris. The crew does not understand English. Only the three of us know you are here. There has been no radio communication with the searchers. The pilot slumped back into his pillow, knowing now, yet not quite knowing all of it. What do you plan to do? I've been in touch with the bankers in London and Rome, Rio and Paris. There is much to be said for letting the war, this long postponed confrontation, take place at last. Your presidents have been men of peace, and even the Russians have shown no eagerness for world conflict. An event like this, today, is needed to plunge the world into chaos. You want that? I do not know, Mr. Harris. It might be more profitable for me to buy and sell against the market, realizing that I could produce your evidence at the last possible moment. But this is the last possible moment, he told Galvin. Once the first missile is launched by either side, it will be too late. There was an insistent buzzing of a signal from somewhere, and the man in slacks went off to answer it, moving smoothly and silently out of view. When he returned, he spoke to Galvin in a language Harris couldn't understand. The small man grunted and turned back to the bunk. An American ship has hailed us, a bit sooner than I expected. I must tell them about you now, or not at all. Looking up at Galvin, Harris already knew the decision. The owner of the yacht could not now allow him to live, to give even a hint to the waiting world of this fantastic conversation. You're mad, he said very quietly. Do you think those who are calling for war, do you think they are sane? There's no money in it for you if the whole world goes up in smoke. Galvin blinked and turned away. Perhaps I am only tired of the indecision of it all. Or mad with the power of this moment. He waited no longer, but threw back the sheet and hurled himself across the cabin at the little man, and he grabbed him by the neck. And was tightening his grip on the wrinkled throat when the secretary drew his pistol and fired a single shot at close range. Harris stumbled backwards, seeing the two of them, the only two in the world who knew. Suddenly, tall above him, he felt very tired as his life drained away. Again, there came to him the unmistakable odor of melting, and he wondered if perhaps he was back in the dead plane. If all that went between had been but a drowning man's dream. Or was this the way the earth smelled as it died? And that is the end of Solo Stories Part 12, The Odor of Melting. I thought that was a great story. Also, with the details of that story, I thought I picked a pretty good one, especially for what's going on in real life around the world with the United States and Russia and all that tension that's happening over there in Europe and in the Russia area. But thank you everybody for coming back and returning and listening to a new Solo Stories. I really appreciate it. We are gaining viewers. People are talking about it more. Did a little breakdown of some of my viewers and where they're all coming from, the people that are subscribed to the Red Eye Hour and people that I know that listen to it. And we have people really from all over the United States, from LA to Florida, from Arizona, New Mexico, all the way up to the East Coast. So it's really getting spread out, and that's really awesome, man. That makes me feel good. The number one reason I do this, man, is just to give you guys content. I love telling stories. I love having guests on and talking with people and that whole, human being conversation, and getting to know other people and hear other people's points of view is always interesting and always good for topics. One last thing before I go today, I just want to say a few words, and this is from a friend of mine. I'm not going to give his location right now, just to give him some privacy, but he wanted me to let you know that there's supposed to be a big march going down on the 23rd of February down on the Florida Capitol in Tallahassee. And I guess Al Sharpton, Van Jones, some celebrities supposedly are going to attend, along with senators and other public officials. And they're doing this for the abolishment of life in prison with no chance of release. This law and other Florida laws are the products of an antiquated slavery laws from the 1800s. Excuse my mispronunciation there. And he says we're all being enslaved by a corrupt system that is not based on justice. And this topic we're going to get into more as we have guests on the Red Eye Hour. This is a topic that is going to come up, and something that we're going to talk about is prison and the laws of prison and the corrupt prison system that's happening in America right now. So I just wanted to say that for him. I told him I would. I guess there's also like the truckers and the whole thing that's happening up in Canada. I guess there's a bunch of truckers that are going to be going down on the 23rd for that march on Florida's Capitol. They're supposed to show up to show their support, I guess. But anyway, just wanted to add that in there for my friend Tommy, and I told him I'd do that. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. Thanks for checking out the new solo stories. I really appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button. If you're not subscribed, hit that like button. Leave us a comment. Please share with people so we can get more subscribers. Check out our alternative content, the Dan Reeves Saga on TikTok, at the Red Eye Hour on TikTok. Go check that out. Until then, guys, we will see you next time. And thanks for tuning in to the Red Eye Hour. And I'm your host, J.Meeks. See you next time, everybody.
Thanks for flying with the Red Eye Hour.